Hello and welcome to Please Fix This. Today we're looking at a Sony TC-WR535 cassette player. It's got two cassette bays. Um, there's a lot of videos of this, other videos of this online, so check it out. If you need a different angle, you got options. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. I got this off of Craigslist from some dude. He said that the belts were like broken, and make sure you unplug it before you work on it. That's an important thing. They don't tell you that these days. So yeah, make sure it's unplugged. Then we're gonna take the outside shell off. There's two screws on each side. Just go ahead and it kind of wraps around, so you kind of have to like bend it out, and then you can kind of just pull it up. It should pop right off. And then there's a bunch of connections there, so we need to remove the front panel. And so we got to take these connections out. There's some ribbon cables here. There's some other cables. There's a cable right there, connector, grounding wire that connects to a screw hole on the side. And there's also this wire over by the power supply. So make sure that's disconnected, and untangle all the wires from the metal holders. There's 5 screws on the bottom of the unit close to the front panel. 3 of them are on the black plastic, and then 2 of them are on the gray metal there. Yeah, some of this is cut off, but 5 screws there. They should be the only screws you see on the front side there. And once you have those out, you can kind of just pull the front panel off. Be careful about wires and shit getting all caught, and components. Don't want that to happen. It'd be bad. So yeah, be careful. Be gentle. Alright, so we have 2 kind of cassette bays slash motor assemblies, and we need to get these off if we're going to replace the belts. They each have 2 screws on that top side, and then there's 1 screw in the middle there for each cassette bay. So sloppily remove the screws. And then before you actually remove the motor assemblies, there is a cable that's connecting the motor assemblies to the like the panel, the display part of the panel. And so that's that little cable with the blue connector. So make sure you disconnect that, and it's kind of threaded around all these plastic bits and metal bits and shit. So yeah, unthread it, because we're going to need to take all this off. Do it on the other side as well. So now that we have both of those cables off, we can take the motor assembly off. So if you look at the far one, I have the close one already removed. You kind of just lift it. It's held by plastic clips that are over there, so just be careful. You can lift one side, kind of lift the top side, and then kind of tip it, and you should be able to get it off. And so yeah, I've got those 2 motor assemblies removed, and now we can look at the belts slash the belt damage. On this one we had 1 small belt that was up there in that region that just popped off when I removed it. And then our other bigger belt here is all like gunked up. It's like melted to this wheel. So that's gonna be we're gonna need to deal with that at some point, On this side we have again the small ones in the right place, and then the big one actually it's totally snapped, and it like was all jammed up. So yeah, we're going to clean these off. We're going to replace the belts. Now, I had a bunch of other belts from a previous repair, but they weren't quite the right size. I think the smaller ones would have worked, but I had to order some replacements specific to this cassette player because there's like a really thick belt there. So go ahead and order those. They were like 17 bucks on eBay. There's different sellers and stuff. And yeah, so now we're gonna clean these off and replace all the belts just because we're in here. So we can go ahead with that. First, we have to remove this gummy ass gum gross stuff. And sometimes it's really hard to do this kind of, sometimes it's really gunked in there. Sometimes it's really stuck. You gotta get it in, you gotta get it out. Clearly, use the tools at your disposal. And really get that out of there. And then I'm just using some rubbing alcohol and a little rag here. Wipe it down, wipe the wheels down. Gotta make sure that this is all kind of clean. We don't want any stickiness. We don't want any melted, whatever these belts are made out of, things laying around. All right, so now we need to put the belts, the new belts on. We're gonna start with this smaller one. It goes around, there's a wheel in the middle of this little assembly. And then we're gonna stretch it across two catches that are down closer to the bottom. So there's one, and then there's the other catch. It's a little bit tricky, and so struggle with it as you see fit. Make sure it's not too twisted up and whatnot, but that's what it should look like right there. So now we'll go ahead and do the other one. Same exact deal. These things are identical, so yeah, the belts are the same for each cassette or motor assembly. And like I said, just make sure it's not too twisted, and that should be fine. So next we want to put on this bigger belt, and we need to stretch it around the big wheel and have it go half around the small wheel, and then there's 3 catches over on the left hand side that the belt is going to be pulled over. They're little black little pillars, and I struggled with it for a while, but I believe in you. It's supposed to look like this. Those are the catches. It's a little bit wonky because the catches are a different level than the wheels themselves, so it's kind of tricky to get it on there, but that's kind of what it should look like. That's a good picture there. So before we go any further, I do want to state that this central white gear, it determines the kind of state of the cassette bay. So it has a few different kind of states that it can be in. If it thinks it's playing, then it'll lock the cassette bay. So if one of your cassette bays is jammed, it might be because this wheel's in the wrong position. The correct position is featured here in these pictures. So this is kind of the default position that you want that central white gear to be in, so that when the machine starts up, everything is in the right kind of position mechanically. I found this out because I put it together and those wheels were in the wrong place, presumably because of the belt that got in there. So now what happens when both of these are in the wrong state, on the right hand side the bay is actually just jammed, I can't open it. And then on the left hand side, put a cassette in and I try to press play, and it flashes and makes some sound for 3 seconds and then it stops. So if any of those two things are happening, then that's a sign that that central gear, I'm sure there's a name for it, a sign that that's in the wrong position. So you can just go back to those images and make sure that that gear is in the right position before you finish putting on the other belts and the wider belts, and before you put, you know, the top of the motor assembly back on. So yeah, now that we have that gear in the right position and we have the belts on the catches, we're going to push these back on, and they really just click in. You know, you don't need to push too hard. They fit pretty snug, so you can just line them up, make sure there's nothing getting pinched, and press them down. Maybe pace around a little bit. That's always good to do. Finally get this other one on, and then after we get those on, then we need to attach the wires that are running down to, well, I guess first put the screws in. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, I'm sorry. You're gonna wanna put the screws in. You know, very important. You know how this goes. I don't need to show you this. I mean, you undid the screws, so, you know, hopefully you know how this goes. But showing it for the purpose of completeness. Okay, so yeah, just painfully long here. So yeah, next what we're going to do is we're actually going to release the belts from the catches. So now just go in here with something like plastic, push that up, and it should snap right onto that wheel to work it a little bit. And that's what you want to see. That's in the right position. And then there's the smaller belt over here, and we're going to want to release that from the catches so that it hits that wheel. And you'll need to do this for both cassette assemblies. So make sure you release all four belts from the catches, and then once the belts are in the right order, you can reattach this cable. It's a little, yeah, I mean, it's kind of, you gotta put it in the right, you gotta weave it through right, you know. That's a pretty specific little place that it wants to be. And, you know, make sure you jam it in there the right size, the right side. And yeah, bend those metal bits back into place. We'll want to do that for the other side as well. Then we're ready to put this front panel back on. So importantly, you know, don't let any wires get pinched when you're putting this back. And there are some kind of ports on the main motherboard there that you can line up to kind of guide you with putting the front panel back on. And then you kind of just push it. It should kind of click into place. You don't need to force it. And then after you get that to click in and you don't have any wires that are trapped, then go ahead and put the screws in for the front panel so that it stays on. Oh, sorry, it's disorienting. Make sure you connect all these cables. So that's the grounding pin thingy. Connect the ribbon cables there. And there's a solid connector that I'll put in right there. Eventually, one of these times, there we go. Oh, I just done, oh, okay, it's not ready. You know, make sure it's not too tangled up. And, you know, after you get all these wires in, that would be a good time to plug it back in. test it out, make sure that everything's kind of operating correctly before you put the top case on. And yeah, if your cassette bays are doing weird things, oh yeah, while you're in here, check out the fuses. Just make sure that they are visually okay. And then yeah, just test it out. Turn it on, make sure it's doing what it should. We got the bays opening. We got the play is actually playing instead of just fucking around for a few minutes. I'll try the other side here. We got that bay opening. We got the play function working. You'll want to test like the reverse too, but I didn't include that in the video. Now we can wrap it up. We can put the outside case on and get listening to some cassettes. So yeah, just make sure it lines up. Put those final screws in, and you should be good to go. Thanks for watching. Have fun. Listen to some music. Make sure it's unplugged when you're working on it. Be safe. And yeah, have a good one. Peace out.